Hello. Apologies for the delayed start today, but thank you for joining me. My name is Dia Dynasty, and I am a professional dominatrix in New York City, and this is the La Maison de Rouge weekly Periscope. We broadcast every Monday, and we always have interesting guests, people of interest of the kink community for interviews. And there's a couple more, I guess, like new topics that we're working on right now that involve BDSM and healing and BDSM and trauma as well. So we'll be having more guests later this year that will be talking about their special healing modalities. Hello, Trash Can Tom. And I saw Lil D earlier. They'll be talking about their specialties in BDSM as far as healing modalities go. And then we'll also have some guests later this year talking about how BDSM has helped them on their healing journey from trauma. So today is an open Q&A with me, and I literally just ran in the door. Hi, Dadley, because I'm not very good with time, and but I'm here. So I'm here to answer all your questions, and because Periscope is a little bit. Hi, hello, Renee. Because Periscope is limited in its accessibility for people with other needs, we also have opened up our email inbox to anybody that wanted to write in their questions. And so we can definitely begin with those. Let's see. So the very first question, and this is from let's see, I'm not sure who this is from. Yes, I'm a nasty woman, Lamau. Questions preferably about BDSM and wellness. If I think that your question that's maybe more on the personal side is worth answering, then I'll answer it. Am I a surfer? I am a surfer of the internet. So there's your first question and answer. Okay, so as far as email queries have gone, this is the first one that I received. I was wondering about your thoughts about pro-dominas and taking on relationship level lifestyle slaves. Do you think there are more dominas who want that but don't seek it because of the quagmire that is the male presence in DS? I think that it really depends on the domina personally and her preferences for what kind of relationships and she would like to have with her submissives, because there are definitely doms that I know, pro-doms, that allow lifestyle slaves in their lives where there isn't necessarily a transactional nature to their interaction, and they receive all kinds of, like, I guess, benefits, personal benefits from having a lifestyle slave that isn't necessarily a client. And then some, you know, there's always like the DS interaction is always definitely in play. So it doesn't really diminish the dynamic. And then, so there are definitely doms that do not prefer to have any sort of lifestyle interactions with slaves because maybe their lives aren't necessarily geared in that format. Perhaps they have like a family that isn't really open to having that kind of thing in their life, or, you know, it's really, there is like a quagmire in the male presence, and it does kind of make things complicated sometimes because, as far as power exchange goes, sometimes like that is very exhilarating in session in a certain way, but sometimes outside of the session, it can be exhausting or not something that is completely understood. So hopefully that answers your question. You hide your subside since years because to life in a small town is difficult. When did you tell your friends? Okay, you know, Johnny, that is something that you do have to really watch out for, is where you're located in this world. There are definitely places in this world where it is dangerous to be openly kinky or submissive or anything, or even homosexual. So so when I told my friends was basically when I first started working at the dungeon. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I live in New York City. It's kind of a progressive bubble out here. Once we step outside of New York City, it gets a little, you know, gets a little sketchy in some areas. Like, people don't always understand what dominant submissive means, or that being a professional dominant is doesn't necessarily involve like certain types of conventional sex, and so they kind of conflate that with like escorting. And then, you know, being submissive for a male a lot of times is seen as kind of stigmatized or looked down upon just because of the social constructs that exist in our culture. And, you know, slowly we're definitely trying to turn those over and becoming more open and accepting to all kinds of sexualities, sexual orientations, whatever that may be for you. But I think you really have to kind of consider, Johnny Good, where you are and what a safe space is for you. And it may only be that a safe space for you exists online. You know, unfortunately, that's the reality of our culture, is that there aren't always safe spaces everywhere you go. So I hope you find your people. Which prodoms are on your wish list to interview? Let's see. Well, we've got Mistress Wild Iris coming, and that will be next week, actually. She was on our wish list. I would like to interview Simone Justice. I would like to interview Damiana Chi. I would like to interview her sister, Jezebel, as well. I'd like to interview... gosh, I can't remember if On Lee is on our Periscope yet, but I would love to interview her because she's a ton of fun. There's a few other doms that are kind of close to us that don't really show their face, and it would be great to have their voice as well as soon as we find a way to reconcile the whole identity thing. And I would love to interview Isabella Sinclair, and I'd like to have Troy Orleans on our show as well. And even though Mistress Winter is retired, I would love to have her voice as well, because I know that she's got some really amazing stories. So what is the next question? What is the longest you have had someone in sensory deprivation? What issues do you look for? So sensory deprivation really depends on who, like, a lot of times people are into it, and then sometimes people have like a little bit of claustrophobia, and that's kind of like exposure therapy as a way to, you know, help them overcome the fear of claustrophobia, but through sensory deprivation. The longest I've had somebody in sensory deprivation was, I think, close to an hour. And this was, here, I'm just gonna plug my phone in real quick so we don't run out of juice. There we go. And I'm back. Okay, So, an hour, this person was relatively fit, didn't really have any issues with claustrophobia, and was seeking kind of like just basically a transformative experience. So the sensory deprivation was almost like the transition from death to rebirth, and that's how I kind of sold it. And issues, I like to stay in touch with the person, like literally touch them. And if I can feel any sort of difference in the way that they're breathing or moving or not moving, I'll just check in. You know, usually there's some sort of headphones on and a blindfold in some way, and so I'll like lift up the headphones and be like, are you doing good? And just a nod is enough to let me know that, you know, they don't need to sit there and like describe their entire experience to me, but that everything is okay. Okay, so any favorite books that have inspired or informed your healing work? Lots of books. One of the most, I guess, like one of the most informative books I've ever read is called Eastern Body, Western Mind. And it is by a woman named Judith Anodia. Let me just make sure that I'm saying her name right. Oh, Anodia Judith, sorry. And it talks about the combination of the chakra system and energetics alongside Western psychology and kind of like childhood and trauma and things like that, and how these are related and intermingled when it comes to treating certain energetic deficiencies or overages. And that is one of the books that I always go to. I use it as a reference a lot of times. Another book that really inspired me is called Anatomy of the Spirit, and that is by Carolyn Meese. And she's a medical intuitive, so she also has training in Western medicine, but also in energetics. And she even talks a little bit about Christianity in her books. And so there's a lot of information that's kind of all intersectional in how things are seen, like different perspectives, and how, you know, all these different angles kind of point to the same thing or looking at the same thing. And then one of the earlier books that I read that really kind of simplified things and broke things down for me is called Think on These Things. And it is by Jiddu Krishnamurti. And that one is definitely like less about trauma and healing and more about kind of just like the simplification of ideas and terms that we all take for granted and what it actually really means. Like, for example, when somebody says, I'm happy, you know, what does that mean exactly? Like, does it mean that I have, you know, a big home and lots of money and all the things to show for, you know, what success means? Or does it mean that they've just eaten something and their belly is full and they're satisfied? Or is it truly a state of being joyous and being able to kind of like find the positive things in life and be grateful and whatever? So really breaks down a lot of very simple words into meanings and what we all kind of load them as. Submissive means painful. No. Troylene's is amazing. I agree. Nasty woman, yes. Advice for people who dance between kink and vanilla and find it hard to properly function in either. You know, it really is like a dance of mental acrobatics, because I have to do that myself. I have a partner and he's got a family, and his family is vanilla, and there are children, and I have to be very vanilla for the most part around his family. And it's like being in the closet. It's like having to really restrict myself, and you know, I don't feel like a full person. I don't feel like I'm being my truest self. And that's kind of, you know, that's kind of the world we live in sometimes, is that we have to withhold certain parts of ourselves in certain situations. And that kind of just, you know, if you can make peace with that, then that's kind of all you can really do. I do definitely advocate for being as much of yourself as possible, especially in the right company, but you have to kind of be discerning in that way of who the right company is. Okay, do you let your slave sleep collared and naked at the foot of your bed? No. Is money slavery a real dom-sub relationship? Is the only way I can life my fetish? Money slavery is an element to, I mean, this is my opinion. I can't speak for everybody else. Money slavery is an element of domination for me. It's one of the many tools that I would use in my toolbox. Other tools being say manipulation, simple like, you know, do this, simple instruction. Yeah, I don't know that. I mean, if it's the only way you can live your life and it's your fetish, that's great. Like you found your thing. Let's see. Let's keep going with these questions. My current thoughts on my desire on searching for a sex slave. Well, I had already found a sex slave, and then things kind of, you know, fizzled out in a way that were unfortunate, and that was the end of that. You know, maybe it's not really something that I was meant to have in my life forever, which is okay with me, but right now I'm not looking for a sex slave. So thanks for asking, and sorry for the very disappointing news. Okay, you know what, would you consider interviewing Morgana May and Kyla Yee? Oh yeah, Morgana May is amazing. We've been trying to actually get her coordinated with her schedule. She's a very busy lady. And so when Lucy goes out to San Francisco, which she does a lot more often than I do, she tries to coordinate, and we've been trying to do that for years. So she's definitely on that wish list. Kyla is no longer working. I believe she's retired. So I would love to interview Kyla, but I know that she would not show up or be available. And let's see, two-part question. 1, do you believe BDSM is accessible to disabled folks and folks with chronic pain? Yes, I do. That definitely takes a lot of negotiation and talking, communication about these things. But I think that once you find your person or your set of people that you really like to play with, that you have the chemistry with, and that you that understand your needs, then that is absolutely accessible. In fact, I've played with people that are disabled, or that have special needs. I'm not sure that I've played with anybody with chronic pain, although I wouldn't doubt it. It's not really always something that gets brought up somehow. I think that it's an important element of communication is, saying like, I have chronic pain, please don't hit me in these certain areas, or I'm willing to try something that is used to treat chronic pain but in a different way, or something like that. And that's definitely a topic for discussion, and would require maybe a little bit of research on the part of the dominant to play properly without damaging anybody. Let's see, and what is the second part? And how could a person with chronic pain begin to access BDSM? Oh, well, I guess I just kind of answered that. I think that, it takes a lot of negotiation, it takes a lot of communication. to find the dominant that is understanding of your needs and is willing to do the research to find the ways of playing that will not aggravate your chronic pain or will somehow, I don't even know if desensitizing your chronic pain is possible, but I know that E-stim and Eros Tech are methods of treating chronic pain. So I would be very curious if that would be a viable way of playing. But yeah, I think that that would be the best way to go about it, is just basically like finding somebody that is, if you have chronic pain, finding a dominant that is willing to attend to your needs. And not everybody is, but some people definitely are and are very sensitive and willing to accommodate. Okay, let's see, unretired. Okay, so you think Kyla Yee is unretired. That would be great if I could find her. Maybe it's my way to life my subside and help feel the right feeling. Thanks for the answer. You're welcome. Are all your slaves locked? No, they're not. Some slaves, like, well, Trash Can Tom isn't my slave just yet. He's a slave in training. But he cannot handle being locked in a chastity device, if that's what you mean by locked. And I've had a chastity slave, Charlie Bear, for many years, and he was locked for over 600 days. But, you know, sometimes health issues arise or situations arise where it becomes more of a burden than a pleasure to keep a slave locked in chastity. But I do have one chastity slave, that's Big Baby G, and Lucy Sweetkill and I share him. And so he is locked and he is fully under our control and has to ask for permission to be unlocked. And whenever he does something that we really are proud of him for, then he gets a little break. Okay, let's see. Can you talk about wants and needs in an S&M relationship? Do you mean youthful explorer? Do you mean S&M relationship as in like a non-professional one? And I'm gonna wait for you to answer that. Have you ever had a black sub who is uncomfortable with the terminology of slave? No, I have not. And if he was uncomfortable, he didn't tell me that he was. In fact, he was the one that started calling himself slave, even though he wasn't my slave. So he was a submissive. I take slavery, you know, ownership very seriously. I don't call just anybody slave. If you want to call yourself slave, that's on you, but I will mostly clarify to people that call themselves slave that slavery is it entails like a collaring ceremony, an agreement, you know, a collar. So I do know that there are people out there, and not necessarily black people, but probably black people too, that are uncomfortable with the term slave. I think that it's all about context. I'm not afraid of the word slave. It doesn't really make me uncomfortable because I don't have that history of being in contact with actual slavery. But I think that for the people that do have that kind of discomfort around this terminology, I think it's important to honor that. And sometimes I use the word devotee. I really like that word a lot. And it means essentially the same thing. Okay, how do DOMs navigate that? Navigate that. Okay. Yeah, so I think I just answered that. Okay, so back to the email questions. So personal question, do you have any pets? I have a black cat. Look at her, she's my baby. All right, back to the email questions. Let's see. All right. Okay, so I have a question in terms of wellness. I'm curious to know how the dominant can introduce aftercare without breaking the role play. For instance, I would like the dom to still be mean and in charge, but asking how the slave is doing after a session may seem too welcoming or accommodating. Oh, okay. This is kind of an interesting question, because I think that aftercare is kind of like, it actually is the breaking of the role play. It is the coming back down to the ground after flying high in the stratosphere of like subspace, dom space, whatever. All the excitement and thrills of like impact play and fear and anticipation and whatever it is, all those like endorphins running around in your blood. Aftercare is the time when you get back into your body and you have to kind of like get ready to go back out into the world. And that kind of grounding and that kind of space is really important, because you can't just like, you know, have a scene with somebody that's pretty intense or takes them out of, you know, their lives, and then just kind of like kick them out in the street. Sometimes like confusion can happen. They don't always know exactly where they are, or sometimes they, you know, have difficulty like putting their own clothes on. So I think that there is definitely a way to, I guess, stay in character for the most part, but like your exchange has to mellow out a little bit. So for the dom to still be in charge, that's definitely doable. For the dom to be mean, I think that, you know, that can be conveyed in tone, but not necessarily like in aftercare where the dom is like, let's make sure that, you know, you're hydrated, and that like, oh, you've got a big cut, let's put a Band-Aid on that. Like that isn't necessarily something that you can always be mean about, you know, because it can be kind of confusing too. And so I think that if you're looking for a way to transition into aftercare without it seeming like so abrupt and jarring, you can talk to your dom about that, and usually your dom will have a way of bringing it, you know, tying it all together, making it a little more seamless. Okay, let's see. More questions. What is your favorite way to get a play partner to subspace impact play? I actually really enjoy sensory deprivation, and I think impact play can be fun, but it's not always something that somebody can handle a lot of or take marks for. So I find sensory deprivation to be more effective, especially if you are incorporating all the senses. And it's not always like total deprivation. Sometimes it's like the confinement inside of like very tight bondage, like whether through mummification or a sleep sack, and then some sort of audio stimulus. So I really enjoy using these playlists that I made that are based in just like kind of altering brainwaves, slowing them down, and then taking away the sight so that it's completely black, and it's not like an obstruction to the face. Whatever you're using to cover the face, it's not like pressing down on your eyeballs or, you know, being distracting or painful. And then something that smells a certain way. So I always enjoy like engaging the sense of smell and bringing them into a subspace that way. Okay, is the euphoria feeling from impact play different than subspace? I don't think so. I think the euphoric feeling, well, I think that like you can get adrenaline from impact play, and that may not necessarily be the euphoric feeling, but I think that what you're talking about is essentially subspace. Let's see. Would you think chastity slavery would work on online domination? Yes. Yes, I think it would. In fact, I think that's one of the most effective ways of remote or distance training is chastity play, because there are ways now with technology that can be utilized where, you know, there isn't, like, if there is an emergency, there wouldn't be a problem because of Bluetooth and wireless technology. So I think that that's definitely one of the most effective ways, actually, of distance play. Okay, so let's see. I think I have one more question here. Oh, thank you, Youthful Explorer. Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna hold on to that question, supplicate for a minute. I'm gonna answer this question really quick, or maybe not really quick, it might take me a little while. So, what are your thoughts on the relationship between CBD/cannabis products and sexual BDSM well-being? Has this ever come up in play sessions with partners, subs, and clients? So I recently spoke on a sex and cannabis panel, and I was the only sex worker there. The other 3 people were people that were involved in the cannabis industry extensively, creating products, specifically products for women like lubrication and even CBD suppositories that treat certain aspects of painful sex for women, or also like even not so sexual issues for women that revolve around our genitals. And so I think that CBD is kind of like this new thing that a lot of people are finding to be very helpful in ways that they never thought possible. And I think also with the way that Western medicine focuses on like male genitalia and male sexual needs and erectile dysfunction, and not so much on female sexual wellness, and in fact tries to take away, you know, female bodily autonomy. I think that CBD is probably one of the best answers for any kind of uterine or vaginal issue that revolves around sex. I know that there is a product that I was given called Awake. Actually, let me look that up real quick. It's called Awaken, and it is a natural arousal lube, and it's made with all natural products that are organic and ethically sourced, because women who use certain products, we're absorbing all of these products through our vagina, and some of these products aren't so great for us. And you know, it's a way of consuming something, and so, you know, if it's not something you would eat, then why put it in your body in a different orifice? So, okay, technically I know that the vagina is not an orifice because it's enclosed and it doesn't totally go through, but it is a place where women consume certain ingredients and chemicals and substances. So it's one of the ways that I think CBD is addressing these health issues and this lack of area that the medical industry is kind of just ignoring. And so let's see. I think that CBD, like liquids or lubricants and suppositories, are awesome. I've also, one of the panelists also talked about using CBD lube anally. And that kind of blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, why haven't I ever heard of, why didn't I ever think of this? So that's something that I may experiment with on my own just to see what would happen. Because I think like different people have different sensitivities to different substances. Make sure that we're not damaging anybody or sending anybody on a crazy trip within our little time that we get to play. So even though this hasn't really come up in my sessions, I think that it's a very rich area for exploration. And then the next question from Lil D is, I recently read an article where corporal punishment / impact play was considered a less frequent / extreme request for pro sessions. How frequent is this requested, and has it changed over the course of your career? I think that it isn't always the most #1 desired activity in a pro session, and that a lot of times some people are looking for like general domination or sensual domination, or like something closer to humiliation or cross-dressing and sissy play, where I don't really want to call these like softer ways of playing, but I think that impact play is very specific, and not everybody is seeking that. And so it really depends on the dominant that you find that suits, your fancies. And so some definitely specialize in impact play. I can only speak for myself. I don't really get a whole lot of requests for impact play, but I do know that Lucy Sweetkill does, because she's very good at it, and she loves exploring her own sadism, and in fact will happily do impact play and corporal punishment because it's one of her favorite activities. So it's really just a matter of who and how. Let's see. There were a few questions that I missed. So, oh yeah, okay, so, oops. Supplicate 37. The screening process for new subs is, well, I prefer that you fill out my form on my website. Tells me all the things that you're interested in, tells me your limits, tells me what you do for a living, generally, and then it gives you space to kind of explain those things further if you feel like writing a little bit more about yourself, because a lot of times if you just put down a simple term, it could mean different things to different people. So being as clear as possible about your interests is very important for me. And then the actual like logistics of like screening is so that you are somebody with a real name that I can find on the internet, whether it's on a Facebook profile or on a LinkedIn profile. And also, if you don't have either of those, then a photo of your driver's license is totally enough for me. That way I could Google you and see if you're a sex offender. And then that is usually it. Oh no, I'm sorry. One of the most important things is having a reference. And I understand that not everybody has a reference, because not everybody has, had a lot of experience playing with pros. So I usually prefer a reference, because then I know people in my community, that I can be in touch with them, or they can vet you. And so those are all like strata of screening. And of course, like for somebody who's completely new, you're not going to have very many references, and that's fine. If I can find you on the internet and make sure that you're not like a wanted criminal for a sex offense, then or that your name doesn't somehow pop up under some other, you know, like Twitter post about you being a crappy person, then we're good. On the go experiences. Hi, Villanelle. I'm not sure what you mean by this question, so I'm gonna let you expound on that. What do you mean by training your sub, or is this common by pro-dom only? Training a sub is something that you do on the way to creating a slave out of them. And then of course some subs, you know, like they don't ever want to be a slave. They just kind of want to learn to do certain things better to please you. And so training is very specific to the dominant and what the dominant sees as fit for what pleases the dominant, as well as maybe how to make the sub into a better person in general. You know, like maybe the sub has anger issues and needs, you know, maybe they need to go to therapy. And so going to a therapist is a part of the training. And then, or seeking, you know, like regular therapy, mental health care is a part of the training. And then of course, you know, it can be very broad. Of course, it can be like, oh, you're somebody that maybe could lose a few pounds, so we're going to put you on a strict diet, or you need to go ahead and go to the gym and make sure that you prove to me that you've been going to the gym, or you know, and then of course it can be a lot more specific to kink in the training as well, like limiting when they can masturbate, or giving them specific instructions to open themselves up in certain ways. And that can be anatomically or mentally or even emotionally. So training is specific to what the dom sees as appropriate for where the sub needs to go. Next, what do you think of the use of poppers? LGBT and people in Europe do it more than the US. Is it safe? I personally am not a big fan of poppers. It gives me a headache. Inhalants in general don't really they don't really mesh with my chemistry. I don't mind the use of poppers if somebody else finds it helpful for relaxing or whatever it is that they use it for. So that's, I mean, I don't know how safe it is. You know, it's like anything else. Like if you use it too much, it's probably not so safe. I believe it can kill brain cells, which don't grow back, but you know, so can anything else. So can television. So that's my 2 cents about poppers. Okay, do you have an Amazon wish list or account? I do. If you go to my website, Johnny Good 10, you'll be able to find that. My website is dominadynasty.com. Okay, is heel fetish common? Is high heel fetish most common fetish? I think maybe one of the most common fetishes is feet, but high heels are closely connected to feet. So, you know, some people who are really into feet don't really like high heels. But some people, you know, they don't really care if you're wearing high heels or sneakers or sandals or flats or whatever. But I do find that a lot of fetishists are very specific about what kind of footwear you wear. And I really appreciate that kind of connoisseurship. But I don't think high heel fetish is the most common fetish for feet fetishists. I think that high heel fetish is the most common fetish for pro-doms of the female variety who love shoes. So, what do you specialize in? How have you always enjoyed this? So my specialty is a little weird. I have always enjoyed this because I found the intricate psychology of like what goes on beneath the play to be just infinitely fascinating. And I love learning about people and kind of what makes them tick. So because that is one of my interests, I think I specialize in perverting certain experiences for people. Like, kind of like a ruined orgasm. And, you know, like I have a lot of taboo fantasies of my own, and I don't really think that those are what I specialize in, but I think that those are kind of like where I come from a lot of times. It's like it all depends on the context of what is acceptable and agreed upon socially in our, you know, larger culture. And then a lot of times I'll like to kind of like play with those and push the boundaries of what those are and kind of pervert them a little bit. But as a professional, I can't really do that a lot because I'm providing a service. And it doesn't always seem like I'm providing a service, but essentially I am providing a service to help play out your fantasies and fulfill certain desires that are very difficult to come by sometimes in fulfilling. So I have to kind of temper that desire to pervert everything. Let's see. High heels fetish. Yes. I mean, what have been some of your favorite self-educational experiences in the path to becoming? Let's see. Okay, so one thing that I always kind of come back around to is play. Like when I find that I'm taking things too seriously or that I've got like this like attitude of being competitive or whatever, I have to kind of like pause. I have to push the pause button and be like, why are you doing this? Because I'm not like one of my values in life is just to have fun. Like I'm not really a business minded person. I'm not here to make all the money. You know, like I don't care about making all the money. I want to make enough money to have fun. And I want to have fun making money. And so my favorite self-education experience is, and you know, I come back to this over and over again, and I have to keep reminding myself, this is play. This is adult play. So of course it is something that we're all informed on, that we do carefully, you know, that we want to carefully negotiate and receive consent, enthusiastic consent if possible about. But you know, in the process, like why not have fun? Because it's a part of our lives that we like in BDSM, it's like a part of our lives that we're not like showing everybody else in the world, so we can get as freaky as we want. And why not dress up like a crazy person? Or why not dress up like a clown? Or why not dress up in whatever way that makes you feel good about yourself? Because it's such a private and intimate experience that that you can just like, you know, it doesn't have to make any sense even. Like play doesn't have to make sense. It can just be kind of like weird and fun. So that is my favorite self-educational experience. That's a really great question, Villanelle. Thank you for asking that. Have you found high heels to be a common fetish? I think I already answered that. Okay. Thank you for your compliment. Any workshop, class, training recommendations? Okay, so as far as like expanding your repertoire as a dom, I think it's really a good idea to really kind of find your niche. You know, I consider myself kind of like a witchy dom. A shamanatrix is my brand. And so I have gone far and wide to gather skills in this direction. So I've, and you know, there isn't like necessarily like a school for witches. So So it's a matter of self-educating, and you know, which means so many different things. So what are the things that really appeal to me? Magic, psychology, and like magic is such a wide range of things. So specifically energetics, like working with energy, so I've sought out classes that kind of point in that direction of Reiki is one of the skills that I've been certified in, and then also yoga is another area that I have certifications in, and these are ways of dealing with kind of like embodied philosophies. So that's really important to me. And then I've also got a certification in hypnosis, because I find that kind of like magical, and like people would say woo woo, but hypnosis is actually just like a very subtle way of communicating to the subconscious. And also magic is very much in dealing with the subconscious and learning about certain ways of like crafting natural materials to serve magical purposes and to have meaning in that way. But if, you know, say you're really into fitness, and so as a Dom, you can definitely get certified or take classes that that maybe are about some sort of specific fitness technique, or like kinesthetics in general, about body movement and anatomy, and those can really help you in your practice as a Dom. Let's see. Okay, Converse, yes. Perval, yes. How many heels do you have? I don't know. I think I have too many to count at this point. Probably like 50 pairs. Villanelle, you are so great in this conversation. Okay, I believe that there is one more question in the email, so I'm gonna look for that. And let's see, I believe it was sent to this other email. So just give me 1 second. Thank you for being patient while I log on to my email. Okay, well, I don't see it, so maybe it's just not here. Okay, yep. Questions. So I answered Lil D's questions, answered Awesome Tofu's questions, answered Aphrodite Void's questions. Quagmire, such a great word. Boop, 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 boop. I believe I've answered everybody's questions. So Trash Can Tom told me that he emailed me some questions, but I did not receive them. And I told him to ask the questions on here, and he has not done that either. So, Trash Can Tom, you do not get your questions answered. Okay, how do you create a scene with someone you meet for the first time? Well, that depends on what their interests are. I like to bring in their interests and kind of create, you know, something that the both of us would enjoy mutually. You know how I like to pervert things, so I kind of throw that in there a little bit. But it really depends on, you know, I don't do pick up play at parties. I stick to email and text messaging, and so usually there's a pretty lengthy exchange in the amount of information that can come through an email, and I like to be as specific as possible. And sometimes we even set up a Skype consultation to talk more about, you know, specifically what they're into and how they like to do it. And so it's like, you know, that's about 50% of the scene, and then the rest of the 50% is how I kind of weave it all into the tapestry of what I want to do. Okay, let's see. Do you have online slaves in Europe? No, I do not. I've got a sub that I sometimes talk to. I wish he was a little more regular, because he seems to fall off. And so he's in the UK, but I'm also working on training an online slave, but not in Europe. I believe he's somewhere in the Middle East. Body massage or pork chop sandwich? Body massage. What if the sub doesn't know exactly what they want? Well, I like to do a little bit of a sample platter of experiences. I offer an intro to kink special for subs that are just kind of looking to get into it but aren't totally sure what they're into, or maybe have like some kind of starting point but are also very open to other things. And the intro to kink special is a good amount of time. It's 90 minutes. I usually find 1 hour to be like way too short. It flies by like 15 minutes. So 90 minutes, and we kind of do like a smattering of this and that and that and this. And we keep it pretty casual and light, you know. We don't like go into deep role play where it's like a safe word or an actual exchange might be masked in some way and misunderstood. So we keep it very clear and casual, and that's usually where we start. Okay, so my time is up, and I just want to thank all of you for being so attentive and polite and asking such great questions. Let's see, what do we have coming up? Lucy and I will be at a party as dungeon monitors, and that will be on February 16th. It's a party produced by Dances of Vice. You're welcome. And so if you are in the New York City area and you don't have anything going on for Valentine's weekend, I strongly urge you to come to this party. You don't have to party your face off. It's just a really beautiful venue. It's called the Capitale. And there will be amazing performances, burlesque, aerial, just regular dance, fire eating, all kinds of really, really beautiful stuff done by real pros. None of that amateur stuff. And then we'll have a little space upstairs where you can play, or you can come and just watch. No, you cannot walk around naked there, but you can wear one of those little thongs that has like the elephant trunk. So I'm pretty sure that tickets are still available, and if you go to dancesofvice.com, you'll be able to find more information. So if you are in Boston, Massachusetts, Lucy and I will be doing doubles very soon. That will be next week. So that's February 20th through 22nd. And we are still taking sessions. We still have a couple of openings. That's 20th through 22nd. And we are also doing triples with Goddess Aviva. And so that's a real special treat, a very rare treat. If you would like to inquire about details regarding our Boston visit, you can email La Maison du Rouge. That would be the same name that you are following here on Periscope, at gmail.com. And So hopefully if you're in that area or nearby, then we can play. And again, thank you guys for tuning in, and I've really enjoyed answering your questions, and I'm glad you're on Twitter. And Miss Lady and I say goodbye, and we will see you next week.